I signed a marriage register with a pen that wasn't mine, under lights that hummed like mosquitos. The groom's hand didn't hold the pen. It couldn't. He was asleep. No, not asleep, parked between worlds, breath borrowed from a machine that sighed in steady, indifferent time. They told me to kiss him. A nurse looked away. A priest cleared his throat. My mother pressed a tissue flat against her red mouth like a bandage. "One kiss," she whispered, as if the room didn't already know the secret. I was marrying my sister's fiancé. He was rich enough to own the skyline, famous enough that blogs wrote about his dog. He didn't move when I touched him. Not a flinch, not a dream. My finger left a small fog on his cheek. I watched it vanish like a lie. "Do you, Eleanor?" the priest started. My name sounded wrong in someone else's mouth. My sister's name fit better in a place like this. Gold letters, polished floors, everything designed to reflect someone more important back at you. But it wasn't her here. It was me. The quiet one. The helper. The girl who knew every hospital vending machine that still took coins. "Take Adrian," he continued, and every syllable placed another brick on my ribs. I said yes because there were cameras off, contracts on, and a family whose last good option had my face. They slid a ring onto my finger like threading a needle through skin. The room applauded in soft, guilty claps. The ventilator did not clap. It kept counting. His eyelid trembled. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe I needed it to. Maybe I needed a sign that I wasn't the only sinner in this chapel with a neon exit that led nowhere but down. I married my sister's fiancé while he was in a coma. And that's not the shocking part. So why me? And why now? You want the truth? Here's the truth they rehearsed, and the truth they buried. There's a family fortune like a glass tower, beautiful until you notice the cracks climbing. There's a clause written in velvet legalese that turns love into leverage. There's a girl in the background they trained to carry everyone else's weight, and a golden sister who never learned how heavy her crown really was. People will tell you this is a story about betrayal. It is. But betrayal is only the door. Behind it you'll find coercion sealed with expensive signatures, a staged mercy that wasn't mercy, and a secret that rewrites who actually belongs to this family. I'll show you how a wedding no one should have planned became a weapon, how a coma can be both a prison and a stage, how a promise can hold more poison than comfort, and how a shy, useful girl learns what she's worth when the truth stops asking for permission. If you think you know who the victim is, wait. If you think you know why I said yes, don't blink, because in a moment, a single line in a will make everything you believe about this family and about me fall straight through the floor. Ready? Before all of this, I was good at being invisible. The kind of invisible that knows the coffee orders, the birthdays, the passwords, the way mom's voice frays when the migraine is real, and the way it hardens when the tears are currency. The kind of invisible that fixes quiet disasters before anyone important notices, reschedules a meeting, irons a dress, reminds Dad to eat when he's too busy saving the company. I was the thank you no one made eye contact with. The family spine, if a spine could also apologize for existing. My sister, Lena, was sunlight. She learned early that the world leans toward warmth. People bent to her like flowers. She had the kind of laugh that made waiters forget other tables, the kind of style that turned elevators into runways. And Adrian, him, fit her like a press release, perfect on paper, photogenic at parties, generous with charities that invited photographers. They were a headline couple, high definition and choreographed. I was the caption in small font. I worked nights to finish a degree I paid for one overdue bill at a time. I kept a spreadsheet color-coded by crisis. Green meant solved. Red meant don't sleep. There was a lot of red. Our father's empire was a sandcastle performing as a skyscraper. The tide kept coming, but the balcony speeches said record quarter. Lena never asked about the tide. She was busy being the view. I'm not saying she was cruel. I'm saying she was curated. When she cried, it was because mascara doesn't lie. When she apologized, it sounded like a soft song written by a committee. She would hug you and steal your watch and somehow convince you to thank her for the time. Me? I made lists. I made soup. I made room. Adrian and I didn't speak more than necessary before the crash. When we did, he was polite, the way money is polite. Expensive silence between words. But once, when Lena was late to her own birthday dinner, he watched me juggle 3 phone calls and a plate of melting desserts and said, "You hold this family together." I thought it was condescension wrapped as compliment. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. I wrote it down in my head, a sticky note on a wall no one visits. Someone noticed. In our house, love was work you did off camera. Success was what you wore to cover the bruises of effort. We didn't talk about mental health. We talked about optics. We didn't talk about debt. We talked about investments. We didn't talk about fear. We talked about opportunities. And then came the night the phone rang, and my spreadsheet didn't have a color for the kind of red that bled through every cell. A crash, a hospital, a fiancé in the ICU, a sister missing. I was still invisible. But for the first time, invisibility felt like a weapon I might need to use. The call came at 2:17 a.m., a time of night that feels like an accusation. The ringtone was the default one, bright, cheerful, obscene. I answered with my name and heard a stranger say it back to me like a question. "There's been an accident." The hospital smelled like lemon disinfectant and burned coffee, the kind of smell that sticks to hair and guilt. Fluorescents buzzed. The vending machine hummed like a choir that forgot the words. I followed a nurse who walked fast like she'd been practicing leaving. "Family?" someone asked. I said yes. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't the whole truth either. Adrian was a geometry problem of tubes and angles. The machines made a city skyline of numbers. A doctor talked about intracranial pressure in a voice that tried to be neutral and landed somewhere near tired. He used phrases that dress death up until it passes for something formal. Medically induced coma, neuroprotective strategies. We'll know more at 24 hours. I nodded like I understood the math of it. If we do X and Y within Z hours, he might return to being a person instead of an equation. "Where is Lena?" I asked. Voicemails piled on top of voicemails. Her phone went straight to dead air, that vacant hallway of sound. I tried her best friend, her stylist, her Pilates instructor, our mother. The answers were variations of the same shrug. No one knew, or no one wanted to be the first to say they knew and didn't care. By sunrise, a headline had learned to walk. Tech Air in critical condition after late-night crash. A blurred photo of the car looked like a piece of modern art that got in a fistfight with physics. Comment sections did what comment sections do. Invented narratives, assigned blame, appointed saints and monsters before breakfast. Mom arrived in sunglasses big enough to qualify as a disguise. Dad came from the direction of the parking garage with the precise panic of a man who knows every second costs money. The family group chat lit up with coded language. Are we coordinated? Who has PR? Don't speak to press. We're devastated, Mom said to a lobby plant. A nurse asked again, family? Yes, I said, and watched my reflection agree in the ICU window. Hours adjusted themselves into a shape I didn't recognize. Time got elastic. At some point, an administrative person, smiling, careful, practiced, took me aside to sign something about visitation limits. Spouse has priority, she added, like reading a weather forecast, cloudy with a chance of ethics. Spouse? I repeated, and the word rolled around in my mouth like a foreign coin. Next of kin, she clarified, for decisions. Then the quiet, the hum before thunder. I texted Lena one more time. Where are you? A read receipt, then nothing. An answer without an answer. By the second night, when the machines felt like roommates, Dad pulled me into a hallway that smelled like old carpet and emergency exit plans. He looked like a man negotiating with gravity. For the family's future, he said, and I learned those 4 words can mean almost anything you don't want them to. What do you do when love is out of reach but duty has your address? We did the family version of a hostage negotiation in a conference room that tried to look like a spa. Water pitchers with cucumber slices, a bowl of mints no one touched, frosted windows that made the world outside look gentler, smaller, unreal. Mom clasped her hands like she was praying to optics. "We need to be smart," she said, which in our house is what people say right before they do something unforgivable. Dad had a folder. He always has a folder. It contains the apocalypse and a pen. He spread glossy printouts like tarot cards, the company debt ladder, the bridge financing that expires if control changes hands, the charity gala schedule that only functions with Adrian's name on the banner, images of smiling people who donate because they like reflections more than causes. "His board is skittish," Dad said. "If he's incapacitated, the trusts trigger. We need continuity." "Continuity," Mom echoed, as if syllables could build a spine. "Where is Lena?" I asked again, and watched it land like a sparrow against a glass door. Mom's mouth made a line. "She can't handle this." "She was supposed to marry him," I said. "And she will," Mom replied, which meant she might, if we choreograph reality, if the headlines obey. Dad slid a document toward me. "There's a clause," he said. "In the event of incapacitation, decision-making passes to the legal spouse. Certain assets remain controllable. We can keep operations stable if..." "If?" I hated how small the word sounded. "If there is a spouse," he said. The cucumber water watched me fail to breathe for a second. "You want me to..." "What?" I knew, but I needed them to say it. "A civil ceremony," Mom said quickly, as if speed could soften it. "Private, temporary, symbolic." "Symbolic with legal teeth," Dad added, because he doesn't believe in euphemisms when money is in the room. I laughed, which is something I do when I'm drowning. "This is insane." "What's insane?" Dad said, voice steady the way bridges are steady until they aren't, "is losing everything because the right form didn't get signed." Mom reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold and expensive. "If you love your sister, you'll keep her place warm." There it was, the line that turned love into labor. Keep her place warm, like a seat at a restaurant you can afford only if someone else pays. "What about Lena?" I asked, softer. "What does she want?" "She wants this family protected," Mom said, and I wondered when want became ventriloquism. "Adrian?" I tried. "What would he..." "We're honoring his intentions," Dad interrupted, which is a sentence that should always be followed by a siren. The folder became heavier each time it slid toward me. He added stacks, employee livelihoods, the scholarship fund, the foundation wing with our name on it, the rumor mill sharpening its knives. "It's a storm," he said. "We need an umbrella." "And I'm the umbrella," I said. "You're the only one who can do this quietly," Mom said. "No scandal, no time for a search, no time for the press to turn this into a circus." They were right about one thing. I knew how to be quiet. "I don't love him," I said, and the truth sat there, small but alive. "This is not about love," Dad said, and something in me took notes. There was a cough in the doorway. A man in an immaculate suit stepped in with a smile that had learned to pass as kindness. You could smell the retainer fee on him. "I'm Carter," he said, "outside counsel, here to make sure we do this properly." Properly, as in legally, as in if you press hard enough, a signature looks like consent. Carter spread the documents like a magician about to produce a rabbit that owes him money. "A limited scope marriage," he said, as if combinations of words can invent new ethics. "NDA airtight. We control language. Minimal witnesses. You'll be a placeholder." A placeholder, like a post-it doing the job of a heart. "What happens if I say no?" I asked. Dad didn't flinch. "Then we all fall." Mom squeezed my hand. "Please." Saying yes felt like jumping from a building because someone else needed to see how far down it was. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. Not yet. Carter's briefcase made a sound when it opened, a soft leather exhale like relief that smelled like billable hours. He talked in clauses the way normal people talk in weather. It will be partly confidential with a strong chance of indemnification. The trust is designed to resist chaos, he explained, which is lawyer for we anticipated disaster and monetized it. Upon incapacitation, the settlor's rights devolve to the legal spouse for limited decision-making, medical, corporate continuance, certain disbursements. The board requires a single signature. Redundancy is risk. And you can just manufacture a spouse? I asked. He smiled with the pity of a tutor who knows the test is rigged. We can recognize the inevitability of your alignment with the family's interests. Mom translated without blinking. It's ceremonial, for now. Carter slid the NDA across the table. The font was small enough to hide sins between serifs. I read words that might as well have been smoke. Liquidated damages, reputational harm, injunctive relief. A paragraph that made my voice someone else's property. Another that detailed what silence costs when it's broken. This is wrong, I said. It's necessary, Dad said. It's temporary, Mom added. Carter tapped a page. The prenup addendum is already drafted. If your sister resumes the engagement, we can apply for a dissolution on grounds of exigent circumstances. Annulment potential is high, clean exit. But in between now and clean exit, I said, I'm married to a man in a coma. Married on paper, Carter corrected, like a man rearranging furniture on a sinking ship. Paper is what matters to institutions. He produced a timeline, crisp as a guillotine, license application expedited through a judge who owed favors, a hospital chapel available at all hours, 2 witnesses who also owed favors, a priest who considered this a form of mercy. Language for the press, if press learned to sniff around, private family ceremony to ensure continuity of care. What if Adrian would say no? I asked, voice tight. Adrian entrusted his life to this family, Carter replied smoothly. We're honoring that trust. Honor is a word people use when money is nearby. He stacked the papers into towers we were supposed to climb. Sign here to acknowledge confidentiality. Here to accept temporary spousal authority. Here to waive claims. Here to agree you will not contest the arrangement in public or private. Here to confirm you understand. What I understood was this. Doors were being closed with me on the inside. Mom placed a pen in my hand. Ceremonial, she whispered, as if the word could remove the teeth from the trap. I signed the NDA. The letters of my name looked obedient. Carter's smile sharpened. We proceed at midnight. I stared at the clock on the wall, and for the first time, I wondered whether Adrian's eyes were really closed, or whether somewhere behind them, a man was listening to us turn his life into paperwork. What does a signature sound like to someone who can't object? They dimmed the chapel like a secret. A bouquet waited in a vase that still had a price tag tucked under a leaf. The priest had a voice that believed in forgiveness more than permission. Carter stood in the back, counting signatures with his eyelids. 2 witnesses hovered like borrowed furniture. They let me choose music. I chose silence. Adrian arrived before I did, bed rails gleaming, tubes braided like tragic jewelry. A nurse adjusted the angle of his head as if posture mattered to vows. I wanted to ask her if anyone ever wakes up in the middle of I do and sues God. The priest began, we gather, no, we concealed. To join, no, to bind. Eleanor and Adrian, names that never learned to sit next to each other. I repeated words that felt counterfeit in my mouth. Love, honor, keep. The ventilator sighed at the wrong places, perfectly offbeat. When it was his turn, the priest read a line that allowed for extenuating circumstances. There is a way to legalize silence if you make it expensive enough. Carter nodded at the ring. It belonged to Lena. Of course it did. Mom slid it onto my finger, and for a second everything in me wanted to shove it back at her and set the flowers on fire. Instead, I let the metal cool against my skin and pretended it was just a circle, not a verdict. By the power vested in me, the priest said. Power, vested. in a room where the only honest sound was a machine teaching lungs how to behave. "You may kiss." I leaned in. His skin smelled like antiseptic and something faintly sweet, like old cologne trapped in a memory. I brushed my mouth against the corner of his, a gesture so small it could have been an apology. His eyelid flickered. I swear it did. A small, stubborn tremor, like a thought fighting its way through fog. I froze, breath gone. The nurse looked up, quick. The priest paused, a comma hanging in the air. "Normal," the nurse said after a beat too long. Stimulus response. Normal is what people say when they need you to stop asking questions. We signed. Pens scratched. Witnesses witnessed. Carter collected papers like a beachcomber who only picks up gold. Mom hugged me as if my body were a contract fulfilled. Outside the chapel, a camera phone glowed in a stranger's hand. Too quick, gone before security remembered their jobs. Headlines, "Love a Ghost." Back in the ICU, I sat beside my husband. I tried the syllables on and they fell off. On the monitor, his heart performed consistency. A green line drew hills no one could climb. "Hi," I said, because what else do wives say on their wedding night? The monitor counted. He didn't. Then, just before I left, his finger twitched. Once. Deliberate. If muscles can speak, what word was that? Morning arrived like an invoice. Carter executed the plan the way generals execute retreats, briskly, without eye contact. "Spousal authority activated," he said, sliding a badge toward me that made doors open and people courteous. Staff began calling me Mrs. Vale. The title fit like a borrowed coat. Warm. Wrong. PR drafted phrases to feed the hungry. A private family ceremony to ensure Adrian's continuity of care. I practiced saying it in the mirror and almost believed I cared more about continuity than breath. A black sedan ferried me to the mansion we never called a mansion. "The Vale property," security corrected. Gates parted like pages. The house had the kind of silence that costs money to maintain. Fresh flowers reset themselves every day. Portraits watched me like I was a typo in a famous sentence. The staff assembled with practiced grief. There was Mrs. Keene, who ran the house like a ship whose captain is the calendar. There was Raphael, the head of security, eyes like polished stone, already 2 moves ahead of any question. There was Maya, the night nurse assigned to Adrian's private suite, who spoke softly to machines as if they might vote. "Welcome home, ma'am," Mrs. Keene said, and I wondered how many people could be welcome in a place that belonged to one sleeping man. Maya briefed me on routines. Range of motion exercises, suctioning protocols, turning schedules, words that turned a person into a list of maintenance tasks. I tried not to cry in front of the chart. I moved through rooms like a tour guide in a museum of someone else's life. His office smelled like cedar and ambition. The desk was neat in a way that signaled delegating rather than discipline. On a credenza sat photos in frames arranged by narrative. Adrian shaking hands with mayors. Adrian smiling with Lena on red carpets. Adrian with a dog that didn't live here anymore. Public narrative control started immediately. A sympathetic columnist ran a piece about devotion in difficult times. An image of me in a hallway cropped so kindly you couldn't see Carter 3 steps away. Comments argued whether I was brave or gold digger 2.0. People took sides in a war they invented before they learned the names. Guilt clung to me like perfume I hadn't put on. But there was something else. Quieter. Relief. As awful as it sounds, the house made space for me in a way my family never had. People asked what I needed and then brought it. Doors opened because I existed, not because I begged. Power was a keycard, and I had one. I used it to sit beside him every night. I read him messages the board wanted him to hear. I played his favorite album on low, only to realize I didn't know which one that was. I asked Maya to tell me. She did. She also told me he sometimes squeezed hands when he shouldn't be able to, and that once, when the news mentioned Lena by name, his pulse spiked a notch. "Stimulus response," she repeated, but her eyes said, "maybe." I kept a notebook of small awakenings, eyelash tremors, throat swallows, the way his jaw flexed when I said home. I spoke to him like he was both here and far away, like a lighthouse trying to reach a ship that refuses to name the fog. At night, alone in a guest room that was bigger than my entire apartment, I wondered who exactly I had married. A body, a history, a secret. On the third night, I found a sock tucked under the chaise in the private lounge adjoining his room, a woman's sock, silk and red. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Lena's style either. Whose was it? The first inconsistency came disguised as broken equipment. Raphael apologized for the East Corridor cameras being down for maintenance the night of the crash. Unfortunate timing, he said, lips barely moving. According to logs, the system had rebooted twice between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. Electrical surge, the report claimed, the kind of generic ailment rich houses catch when truth is contagious. Then there were the meds. Maya was meticulous. Her charting could shame a Swiss watch. But on Thursday, the IV bag change had 2 signatures 15 minutes apart with the same timestamp. Duplicate entries happen. Mistakes happen. But not to Maya. She double-checked. She triple-checked. She looked at the chart like it had lied to her personally. New float nurse that night, she murmured, not quite meeting my eyes. Didn't stay on. I asked Mrs. Keene about the sock. Her mouth made a polite shape. The laundry rotation is complex, ma'am. Items. Travel. So do ghosts. Adrian's private suite had a sitting room that felt like a confession booth for furniture. A faint scent lived there, not mine, not antiseptic. A complicated perfume with a bitter floral heart. I smelled it again 2 days later in the elevator. Elena, the daytime housekeeper, used alone despite policy that said never be alone with patients' valuables. Policy is a word that gets shy around power. In the city apartment Lena kept for work, a vanity box was missing from its shrine, a lacquered piece she guarded like it contained cures. The dust outline framed its absence like chalk around a body. The lock on the closet safe showed scratches new enough to glint. I found a burner phone in a drawer of Adrian's office, tucked under a stack of shareholder reports. 5 voicemails, all from a blocked number. The voice was masked, or maybe the person was talking through a scarf. Plan B, it said once. Move the dose, it said another time. Watch the cameras. I played them for Carter. He took the phone without touching it. We can't authenticate, he said, before I'd asked. Don't get distracted. Distracted from what? The script? The version of events that keeps the roof from falling? Meanwhile, whispers traveled like drafts. A driver mentioned someone being dropped at a private clinic the night before the crash. A florist remembered an order for lilies. Lena hates lilies. A receptionist at a neurologist's office recognized the family name too fast, then corrected herself too slow. In Adrian's room, I tested my theory recklessly. I said Lena's name and watched his pulse climb a notch. I said mine and watched it settle. I said home, and it stuttered, like the word tried on different meanings. Stimulus response, Maya said again, but now she looked like someone translating from a language with too many words for storm. The house taught me to listen to what people didn't say. The charts taught me numbers can lie by omission. The cameras taught me that what isn't recorded can be as loud as what is. On the 6th night, I returned to the chapel to sit where we'd made disaster look like duty. The vase was empty now. The price tag was gone. In the quiet, I replayed the moment his eyelid flickered and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Was the coma a cage someone put him in, or a door he chose? And if there's a door, who else has a key? Lena moved through rooms like she owned the light. Even as kids, she edited reality. If she tripped, the floor apologized. If she lied, the truth rebranded. I learned to carry the aftermath, ice packs, alibis, apologies wrapped in cupcakes. We were a duet written in 2 keys. Her melody, my metronome. With Adrian, she performed love like a luxury product. Limited edition, waitlisted. She cultivated scarcity, even of affection. He seemed to like it. Men often mistake rationing for value. Their photos told a story even the house believed. Champagne angles, sunset silhouettes, statements crafted for maximum sympathy. But in the footage between frames, they were negotiated. Everything felt like a contract with a dress code. There were moments, though, when the veneer thinned. A charity gala backstage when Lena's smile slipped and she hissed, "Don't touch my hair," after Adrian brushed a strand from her cheek. A silent month when her engagement ring disappeared from photos and reappeared 2 carats heavier. A brunch when she laughed at his joke, then checked if anyone saw her being nice. She brought me souvenirs from her life, lipsticks that didn't suit me, shoes half a size too small. Once she handed me a small velvet box, for luck, a gift she never let me open, then asked a week later if I still had it safe, because it wasn't for me after all. I kept it anyway, hidden, because some part of me believed that if I held even the shadow of her gifts, I might inherit her gravity. After the crash, Lena ghosted the world with professional commitment. A stylist texted me. She canceled the shoot. A publicist emailed a line about privacy during this sensitive time. Privacy is expensive. She was rich in it. I visited her apartment again, searching for the velvet box. Gone. In its place, a note she must have left for herself, a single word on a cosmetic pad. Plan. No A, no B, just plan. As if planning was her religion. In the mansion, the portraits watched me practice being Mrs. Vale while I catalogued my sister's absence. Every room had evidence of her, a scarf like a rumor on the banister, a lipstick stain on a water glass, a calendar with dates circled and then scratched out until the paper scarred. Underneath the curated world Lena built, I felt the draft of something older, the childhood rivalry we never admitted to because it made us sound ordinary. 2 girls, 1 family spotlight, and a mother who believed love is a trophy you hand to the winner. I kept asking myself a question that tasted like betrayal. If Lena had been here, would the wedding have happened anyway? And if she planned for absence, who benefited most from me taking her place? He found me on the service stairs where the house stops pretending it's a home and admits it's a machine. "I shouldn't be talking to you," he said, which is how allies begin. His name was Thomas, one of the drivers who prefer night work. He carried the exhaustion of people who know when to look away and the courage of people who finally don't. He held out an envelope that wasn't thick enough to be dangerous and wasn't thin enough to be harmless. "Found this under the backseat mat after a clinic drop," he said. "Didn't know who to give it to." Inside, photocopies of invoices from a private neurology institute, appointments booked under a shell name that folded back to one of Adrian's holding companies, cash payments flagged as concierge sedation, a phrase that belongs in horror films and boardrooms, dates, 3 in the month before the crash, 1 the day prior, notes about prolonged sleep induction protocols. "Who was dropped?" I asked. He stared at the wall as if it might remember for him. "I drove Miss Lena twice. A third time, a man I didn't know, not Mr. Vale, someone expensive." He slid me a second thing, a key card with no logo, a tiny V carved into its plastic like a secret handshake. "Found this in the seat track." "Why tell me?" I asked. "Because you look like you'd do the right thing even if it ruins you," he said simply. "And because I have a niece in the scholarship program your family funds, I don't want to lose my job. I also don't want to be the guy who kept driving while someone played God." He hesitated, then added, "There's more. The night of the crash, I was told to take the long route past the East Gate because the cameras were testing. Same voices on this." He tapped the invoices. The clinic booked under a different name, but the contact number matched a line Carter sometimes uses. When he left, the envelope felt heavier than paper. Off-the-books medicine. A key to a door I hadn't found. A breadcrumb trail leading somewhere people like me aren't supposed to go. On the way back to Adrian's room, I pressed the keycard in my palm until it hurt. Pain felt like a promise to myself. Who stages sleep, and who profits when a man can't wake up? I decided to stop asking permission from rooms that never intended to say yes. At midnight, with the house exhaling itself into silence, I wheeled a portable speaker into Adrian's suite. Maya had stepped out to chart. The monitors cast green constellations on the ceiling. I opened a music app and scrolled past playlists called Focus and Heal and Calm to a folder no algorithm could name. Our grandmother used to play a peculiar lullaby on a scratched piano in a house we lost when we started pretending we were better than small. It was Lena's favorite. hers specifically. When we were 8, she made me promise never to play it without her because it made her feel too much. The melody lived in the muscle memory of my hands long after we forgot where we left our childhood. I pressed play on a recording I'd made years ago, back when phones still surprised me by what they could keep safe. The first notes were thin, then warmer, like a memory unclenching. Adrian's eyelids fluttered. I leaned in. "Adrian," I whispered, "if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Nothing. The ventilator sighed. The machine that counts did its counting. I tried again, this time saying Lena's name before the melody turned. The pulse spiked, small but undeniable. I said my name and it steadied. I said, "I know about the clinic," and the heart rate stuttered like a skipped stone. Maya returned, froze, then didn't reach for the call button. "Again," she said quietly. We ran the experiment with the rigor of two people who were about to break the rules that pretend to be fences. Song, names, questions. Patterns emerged, not enough for court, enough for conviction. Stimulus response, Maya said automatically, but her voice lacked the scaffolding. Or, she didn't finish, or he was trying. I showed her the invoices. She read fast, then slower. "This isn't treatment," she said. "This is management." "Of what?" "Of a condition that might not be as severe as it looks," she said. And the room did that thing rooms do when the truth wants more air. I took out Thomas's keycard. "Help me find the door this opens." Maya hesitated only as long as it takes to become a different person. "There's a sub-basement clinic built when the house was renovated, off the plans, for privacy." "I've never been. Raphael has. Carter definitely has." We moved like burglars, stealing back time, past portraits, down service stairs, through a hallway that forgot to be elegant. The keycard light blinked red, then green. The door unlocked. Inside, a room that smelled like citrus and secrets. A recliner with restraints disguised as ergonomics. An IV pump with dosage presets. A small fridge with ampules labeled in a handwriting I recognized from the invoices. Monitors echoing the ones upstairs, only these didn't record to the main network. On a steel tray lay a velvet box, Lena's velvet box. I opened it with hands that didn't feel like mine and found a flash drive and a ring that wasn't the engagement ring. No going back. The flash drive held its breath. Back upstairs, Maya ran a scrubbed laptop we could afford to lose. No network, no cloud, just two women in a secret trying to stand up without knees. The drive contained folders named like they were afraid of vowels. SV1, SV2, AUX. Inside, scans of contracts, emails forwarded from burner accounts, photos of whiteboards no one wanted in discovery. The shell companies spiderwebbed from a trunk we recognized, a holding entity Adrian used for special projects. Off that trunk, branches labeled with poetry, Everblue, Northlight, Golden Hour, pretty names to hide ugly work, payments to the private neurology institute, retainer fees to a pharmacologist whose CV bragged about consciousness modulation, a calendar overlay placing Lena at 2 appointments marked just observation. There was a prenup addendum draft I hadn't seen, dated 6 weeks before the crash, altering board voting rights in the event of temporary incapacity. It introduced a proxy spouse mechanism that sounded like a dare. The legalese suggested that if Adrian were incapacitated, a designated spouse could exercise his voting shares to protect enterprise value. The name field was blank. A sticky note scanned beside it read, in Lena's looping hand, "Fill after rehearsal." Rehearsal. An audio folder labeled M contained voice notes, the same masked voice from the burner phone. Adjust dose by 0.5. He tolerates. Do not route through main EMR. Watch for sympathetic spikes when she's present. She. Which she? Another file was video, silent footage of the sub-basement room. Date stamps 2 nights before the crash. Adrian sitting in the recliner, eyes open, pupils huge and heavy, a drip attached. He blinked. He swallowed. He raised a hand, slow, underwater, then dropped it, as if weight had been added to his bones. "Not coma," Maya whispered. "Sedation cycles." Schedules in a spreadsheet mapped his bad days to board votes, investor calls, negotiations. The pattern glowed like a bruise. When decisions tightened, Adrian slipped into curated silence. When image demanded romance, Lena appeared on his arm and the dosage notes read, "Lighten." The paper trail extended to Carter. Emails from a private account, euphemisms like quiet period and deep rest. A draft press statement timed to a dissolution filing, our ceremonial marriage prepped to vanish if the weather changed. Worse, there was a meeting memo with Dad's initials. Contingency, it said. If A proves uncooperative during re-entry, proceed with spouse authority to finalize reorg, minimize mess. Re-entry. As if waking were a landing no one wanted the pilot to control. I combed through bank transfers, and there it was. Payments from Everblue to a consultant X, routed through a tax haven island that sounds like a cocktail. Consultant X cross-referenced with a dossier in AUX, a doctor from the clinic who believed ethics are flexible if your retirement plan is ambitious. Who built this? I asked, throat ash dry. People who thought they could choreograph a man's mind, Maya said. On the flash drive, a file named Home waited in a root folder. I clicked. A text document opened, a single line. If you found this, she didn't. Who's she? Lena? My mother? Or the version of me they prefer? The placeholder? I scrolled. Another line appeared, as if typed after the first. I'm not sleeping. I'm watching. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I looked at Adrian, at the steady green on the monitor, and felt the room tilt. Staged sleep. Proxy spouse. A rotating lock where my face fit by design. They wanted silence. They made me a key. I didn't sleep. By morning, adrenaline had pickpocketed my fear and left receipts. I confronted Carter first because he would lie with grammar and I needed to hear the shape of it. His office in the annex smelled like contract ink and triumph. I placed the flash drive on his desk the way you place a grenade you're not sure is live. Interesting, he said, without touching it. A narrative. A confession, I said. He smiled the way wolves might if they practiced law. Evidence without provenance is delicate. Like a man in a coma who isn't? A fractional pause. Words matter, Mrs. Vale. I opened the velvet box and set the ring on top of the drive. It wasn't the engagement ring. It was a signet, heavy, with an engraving I recognized from the old family crest, the one Mom had redesigned when money taught her taste. Inside the band, a date, the year before I was born. Whose is this? I asked. Carter's eyes did the smallest math. An heirloom. From whom to whom? Silence is a shape. He wore it. Maya texted, "Come now." In Adrian's room, Maya had turned the speaker on low. The lullaby lapped at the edge of the bed like water asking to be let in. "Watch," she said, and lifted his hand into mine. "Ask him a question he can answer with 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no." I swallowed. "Are you here?" 1 squeeze. "Have you been kept asleep on purpose?" 1 squeeze. "Did Lena know?" 1. "Did Carter?" 1. "My parents?" A pause that felt like a wound. Then 1. "What do they want?" I asked, forgetting the rules. His finger twitched twice. Not yes, not no. Then his mouth, not enough to be a word, enough to be intent. I leaned close. "Adrian, if there's something you need me to see..." Maya pointed to a fresh bandage near his clavicle, edge peeking from the hospital gown. "Not ours," she said. "Recent. Small implant port, maybe for steady microdosing." She looked angry the way angels might if they were forced to do paperwork. The plan crystallized in a way that made me hate my own clarity. Staged Coma to trigger the incapacitation clause, a proxy spouse to consolidate control under the guise of devotion, keep the board docile, the press sympathetic, the money obedient. And when re-entry time came, when Adrian woke enough to argue, use the spouse authority and a thicket of NDAs to finish the reorg before he could say, "I changed my mind." But then something went off script. On the drive, a hidden folder inside Home, you had to highlight the blank space to see it, held an audio file. Adrian's voice, hoarse, forced, but undeniably his. If you're listening, I figured it out. I knew about the staging. I played along at first. I thought it would flush out who was pulling the strings. Carter set the table. Lena smiled for the cameras. Your father sharpened the knife and called it structural change. But then I heard something I wasn't supposed to. They don't plan to hand it back. They plan to cut me out after the transition. Keep me quiet. Keep the story pretty. I won't go quietly. A second voice entered, blurred, but the cadence was my mother's. We're protecting what's ours. Adrian again. What's yours? Read the will. Paper rustled. A laugh that wasn't kind. The air language is poetic. To the firstborn daughter of X. They assumed that meant Lena. Silence. Then Adrian, softer. It doesn't. Eleanor, if you found this, it's you. Your mother is not... Static devoured the sentence, chewed, spat. My skin went cold. Maya squeezed my arm like I might run. Another file, a scan of the original will and trust, pre-redesign. In the clause naming control if the patriarch dies or is incapacitated, the phrase appeared, firstborn daughter of X, X being a name I had never seen attached to my mother. Cross-referenced with a sealed birth certificate, unlocked by a tiny password file on the drive, a date, my birthday, and a word, home. It opened a scan cast in bureaucratic gray. Mother, unknown. Father, listed. A notarized adoption finalized before I could crawl. A confidential envelope addressed to me in Adrian's handwriting, dated a month before the crash. I will back you if it comes to this. Adrian had known. He had waked, at least sometimes, enough to draft a contingency that recognized me, not Lena, as the heir the original trust envisioned. The golden sister wasn't the firstborn daughter in the will's strict terms. I was. A confession video completed the puzzle. Adrian, eyes half-lidded, fighting the weight in his veins. Carter, if you're watching, I revoke verbal consent to the proxy mechanism. Board, if this reaches you, recognize Mrs. Vale's authority per the original trust language. Firstborn daughter of X. That is Eleanor. Protect her. Maya looked like prayer and fury had learned to share a face. He recorded this for you. For once, I didn't feel invisible. I felt inevitable. The house changed temperature without touching the thermostat. I told no one about the will yet. I wanted to see what people chose when they thought I was still small. Carter called an emergency alignment in a room designed for applause. He spoke in bullet points and war metaphors. We move to finalize governance updates under spousal authority, he said. We accelerate the dissolution of the placeholder marriage once optics settle. Placeholder, I repeated, letting the word cut my mouth. Mom arrived 10 minutes late with the kind of sunglasses you wear to block out consequences. We have donors panicking, she announced. Keep messaging clean, no surprises. Surprises? I said. Like a secret clinic in the basement? Raphael didn't blink. Professionals rarely do on purpose. Carter's smile calcified. Careful with accusations, he murmured. They fatigue goodwill. Whose? I asked. Yours? He slid a packet across the table, a timetable for the reorg. Deadlines were highlighted like threats. In the margins, a note in my father's handwriting. If A resists, proceed via medical proxy. Dad joined via speakerphone, voice steady like a surgeon's hands. We cannot wait on uncertain outcomes, he said. We act. We acted, I said. We acted so hard we put a man to sleep and tried to steal his voice. Silence again, that expensive kind. Mom leaned forward. Eleanor, you're spiraling. Up, I said. Thomas texted, board members arriving early. Maya texted, he's lucid. Short window. Carter's eyes flicked to my phone. Put that away, he said, and even his politeness had owner's rights. We'll walk you through the signatures required today. I have signatures, I said, heartbeat drumming in my throat. And recordings. I played the confession audio. The room stilled like a deer learning a new alphabet for danger. Mom's hand tightened around her glass until it squeaked. Carter's jaw twitched once, then practiced stillness. Raphael's gaze shifted half a degree toward the nearest exit and then back. Professionals map routes even when the building looks calm. Dad on the speaker. "This is inadmissible." "It's indicative," I said, "and so is this." I placed the signet ring on the table, then the will scan, then the birth certificate file, then the password paper that said home as if it had always been for me. The air language, the trust, the clause you reworded when you thought no one remembered the old version. Mom looked at the page like it might burn and save her at the same time. Her voice came out careful, stitched. "Where did you get this?" "From the man you put to sleep," I said. Maya slipped in, eyes bright with a message she hadn't said yet. "He's awake," she whispered. "Not fully. Enough." Carter stood. "No," he said, finally dropping the polite. "We are not." "We are," I said, surprising myself with the steel I'd been polishing in private. "Board's here, Adrian's here, and I am here." Raphael made a choice. "I'll escort," he said, opening the door that wasn't supposed to open today. Mom's mask faltered, a hairline crack down the center. "Eleanor, think." "I am," I said, and for the first time, she looked like she believed me. We walked toward the ICU like people heading into weather. The board shuffled in behind us, murmuring the way crowds do before a verdict they didn't expect to witness. I didn't know how the next 10 minutes would rearrange our lives, but I knew who I was walking as. Not the placeholder, the heir. And if choosing that burned the house down, then let's see what survives the fire. The room was small enough to force honesty. Lena arrived polished for war. Carter stood with a contract where a spine should be. The board hovered. Maya checked the monitors. Adrian's eyes, open, fogged, furious, found me. I pressed play on his confession. Then I laid the will down like a blade. Lena laughed, brittle crystal. "She's making this up." Adrian's fingers wrapped mine, one squeeze, then raw as gravel. "No." Carter moved. Raphael moved faster. The door clicked shut. "I invoke authority under the original trust," I said, voice steady. "Suspend counsel. Secure the clinic. Notify law enforcement. Board, recognize me." Silence inhaled. Then the chair of the board nodded. Once. Lena's mask split. "You stole my life." "No," I said. "You rented mine." And this time the machines weren't the only ones choosing who gets to breathe.